Yeah, an alarm will not get me up, but what will wake me up from a dead sleep is...
There was a stop, please stop. Only cat owners know that.
It's October, right?
I was gonna say, and we're back for Pastor's Q&A.
Where's the baby?
Where's the baby?
Yeah.
There he is. Ice Age.
Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a great reference. Hi, so good. Sorry.
So, if you have any questions, because this is questions.
Not about what
Pastor's
just
Q&A,
happened, but...
You can send your questions to questions@watersprings.net. Today we have Pastor Ty.
Hi.
We have Pastor Shane.
Hello.
And Pastor James. And I'll be your host this week.
Never again. Because being with these guys, I'm not doing it again. But
This is why we don't have Shane on the show.
Anyway.
all right.
So, first question.
Okay.
I think you guys will like this one.
Okay.
Why do some people think that metal is the devil's music?
Well, okay, wait a minute. Metal is not music. Metal is something we create. It's an element. It's like we make things out of it.
I highly disagree. No, I'm
Right,
just kidding.
yeah. So I'm assuming they're talking about metal
music.
Music,
Metal.
right? Not metal.
Yes.
But, okay. All right.
Yes,
Just want to
I
clarify
would
the
think
question, and give you guys a chance to start looking some things up. But I think this issue of people fighting over music is as old as time and is going to continue. One of the things that I didn't know about until I took music history when I was in college, we were required to take like music appreciation, music history. So it was called Music 105. You really couldn't be in the music department unless you've taken it. And we discovered, and we did not know this, that Gregorian chants used to be in open fifths, open fourths. Musicians, you'll understand this. And that means that the chord doesn't feel like a chord. And it's the third of a chord that makes it minor, major.
Right,
the third,
right.
And so there was almost a war that started over adding the third to Gregorian chant. So you had kind of France in that area, and then you had England in that area, and they actually added a note, and it almost started a war over that third in Gregorian chant. If you don't know what Gregorian chant is, you should look it up and listen to it. But they added a third, and that third almost started a war. We've been fighting over music in the church as long as I think the church has been around.
Yeah, and so like to digest this question, we got to take it apart.
Yeah.
I want to start by saying this is interesting. I don't think that the devil owns any music because it says, "Is this the devil's music?" You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but and I think this comes back to worship leaders getting a bad rap in the church, and I'll explain why. Because when we look at Isaiah chapter 14, we look at Ezekiel 28, right?
Yep.
Lucifer, who after his fall, Satan, was an instrument of worship.
Right.
He was created. He was perfectly made. He was
As an
created. He in his own creation was an instrument. He had pipes and timbrels, and that was kind of how he was created. So heaven's going to be amazing when we get there, by the way. Music in heaven's going to bomb. It's going to be great.
Dude,
And
yes.
I feel bad for the people when we get there and there's a huge Marshall stack next to the throne. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
and the
really
mosh
great.
pits.
The
And
mosh
I'm
pits
just
and all
kidding.
that stuff.
I'm just kidding.
But we don't know that for sure, but we think it might be in the Hebrew somewhere. But
It'll be in my mansion.
It'll be in his mansion. But I think it's interesting, why do some people?
Right.
And we had a question last week, why do some? And I think we need to be careful because sometimes we get set up.
It's partial.
It's partial. It's like, why do some people? Well, no, there are people, very direct, and years ago, let's just call it out, the Assembly of God lost their mind over music.
Yeah.
And it was the Assembly of Gods that started saying, hey, rock and roll's from the devil, and there's all kinds of books that came out. This is the devil's music, things like that. But let's talk about why they believe that. Why do some believe that? Some believe that because people were using a method of communication for evil.
Yeah.
By the way, was there metal music out there that was written to glorify darkness?
Sure, of course.
Absolutely, and that's why they rejected it.
Just
But
like
that
there's
doesn't mean,
pop music.
but
that's
that doesn't mean the
written for
genre.
darkness. There it is.
That's the whole point. It doesn't mean the genre is the problem.
The devil doesn't own a genre.
No, not at all.
And I think that's very important. And I would say that to answer the question just at face value, why do some people think that metal is the devil's music?
History.
I think that it's immaturity. That's where I would go.
Yeah.
And that's not me poking at those people or anything like that. It's just immaturity.
Well, it's like, is country music of the devil?
Right.
Is metal music of the devil? Is pop music of the devil?
Is
Is
that
classical music of the devil?
Is that meat sacrificed to idols of
Is
the
that
devil?
meat sacrificed to idols? Is that right?
Yeah, we can
right,
go
yeah.
on.
It's the same kind of thing, and I think we have to be very careful. We don't
Yeah.
want to hurt or stumble people.
Exactly.
But at the same time, we have to understand music is amoral.
Yes.
It's how it's used that's the problem.
My grandma, so I am a metal head, metal musician, all that stuff. Growing up, my grandma would live with us at certain points in our lives, and she's from an older generation. She's now since she's passed away. Grandma, love ya. And she would always tell me, it sounds so evil. And a lot of times it's the appearance of things that stumble people.
Yeah.
They go, at face value, these metalheads, they sound so aggressive, they sound so evil, they sound so wicked or whatever. And I would read to her some of the lyrics, and then it would put like a pause on her assumption, and she would reconsider it. James, I
Right.
think you had something.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you said it's a level of immaturity when typically what I've seen in my few years here on earth is that the older generation will look at the new progress in music, even in a Christian genre, and they will be the ones who most heavily critique it. But when they were young, it was probably their elders who were critiquing the music they were being invited into worship with, in a sense. But if you remove a Western lens and we go to Scripture, there's so much in the Psalms that instructs us to have unabashed worship. I mean, look at Psalm 146 says, "Shout praises to the Lord." Shout. It doesn't say sing with melody. It says shout praises to the Lord. And if you've heard groups like Spoken, they are shouting, screaming worship to Jesus. When I was a teen and I found Striper, my parents told me that the beat was of the devil, and I didn't understand how that particular. I mean, it says in Psalm 150, praise him with the cymbals, and there's cymbals in a drum set.
And tambourine.
Absolutely.
And the trumpet.
So it's interesting that you said, anything in creation can be perverted and used for evil. Most interestingly enough, you and I are made in the image of God, but humans are the ones who choose whether or not to use their vessel, their body, for evil or for good.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to just read the substance of any music that you're listening to, because there's tons of genres out there, and there are tons of Christians in those genres.
Right. So here's a great example. All reggae music is about weed.
It's not only. Well, I'm not going to say what I'm saying.
But there is some, right? All metal music's about death. Not always, because there are metal bands out there that are talking about life. Here's something to consider. Titus 1:15.
Yes,
right?
great.
So, to the pure, all things are pure. And this speaks to what James just said. To the pure, all things are pure. But to those who are defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure, but even their minds and conscience are defiled. And so I think we have to realize is that when you have an unbeliever doing music, their music reflects who they are.
Right.
When you have a believer doing music, it reflects who they are in Christ. And here's an interesting question. Can you have a believer who does what we would consider secular music?
Of course, there's tons of them.
100%. There are tons of them. Because, again, this comes back to identity. Christian musician.
Right.
Does that mean we have a Christian plumbing? We have Christian housekeeping? Or do we have somebody who's a Christian who's a musician?
Right.
I am a Christian who's a musician, and I have played every genre of music you could imagine. Yeah. And I'm a Christian. That's never changed. And so there's no Christian jazz. There's no
Right.
You know, it's like it's the intention, and when our intention is to glorify God, it honors the Psalms. It honors what God has called us to do.
And Paul would say, become all things to all men so that some might be saved, right?
Yep.
And so when we have these Christian metalheads or rock and rollers or whatever, when they are being a light and holding fast to what they believe in that community, you are reaching people that would never, ever in a billion years step foot in a church.
You know, I think that actually is also, it would be good for us to get some insight on this second question too, from this viewpoint, which is, I know we're not supposed to have a spirit of fear, so why do some people, including Christians, enjoy things of horror genre, like books, movies, or games?
Okay, so first of all, I want to clarify something that is really important in my mind. Is the question is about entertainment.
Right.
A book, a movie, games. We're talking about why do so many, including Christians, enjoy horror genre, right? And I don't particularly like horror genre. It's not my cup of tea. Really, that's not where I'm at. That's not my thing. But I'm willing to stay up all night and preach the gospel through it, right? Whatever we can do there. But it's entertainment, and I think for me, I'm not afraid of that stuff because I know it's not real. Does that make sense? Like I'm not afraid of it personally because it's not real. It's just a movie. It's just a book. It's just, and when Harry Potter came out, the church lost its collective minds. If you guys remember that, right? Right. Everybody's losing their minds about these books, and it's of the devil and stuff. It was the same conversation about metal music is the devil's music. Harry Potter is evil because of this. And by the way, were there things that we had to teach our children during that season about darkness and light and things like that? Absolutely. But you know what? You could have said the same thing about Star Wars. It's the Force and all this stuff, and it's teaching New Ageism, and it's like we can always find a way to turn the tide to make something seem evil. It doesn't take much to manipulate in that way. But we don't have a spirit of fear. But why do people like that? I think, well, first of all, sometimes why do people jump out of perfectly good airplanes?
Hey.
Because the view is amazing.
Right? Okay.
It cleanses your sinuses, dude. It's amazing.
Okay. First of all, I'm now concerned about the people I'm sitting with at this table. So that's like, okay, we're not supposed to have a spirit of fear. A spirit of fear, but why? Fear. We're not supposed to have a spirit of fear, and that we find that, by the way, in Timothy, right? God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power and love and of a sound mind. And so, in a sound mind, we're going to go jump out of a perfectly good airplane and experience this rush or this thing, right? I don't know. How many of you have jumped out of an airplane at the table here?
I want to.
Apparently, you have people who are going to go with you to do that. But you're the person who gets the plane in the air.
That too.
Right?
But you also have to know how to take care of yourself.
There's something important to remember in the midst of all of this,
Yeah.
right? And it's that your preference cannot be somebody else's absolute.
Yeah, your preference cannot be somebody's
Your
absolute.
preference cannot be somebody else's absolute, right? And so when it comes to horror movies and that genre, my preference is, dude, I don't care about monsters or whatever. That doesn't bother me. I can watch the suspenseful monster movies. But my line as an individual, this is not everybody else's line,
right.
But my line as an individual when it comes to those types of movies is I don't want to waste my time watching something evil or demonic.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just not going to do that.
Where God's being blasphemed, I'm not in.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm down.
I'm not going to go sniffing out everybody who does do that, but I'm going to hold my ground. I'm not going to compromise like Daniel and his boys with Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
And so be it, right? So that's my take on
But
that.
somebody else might want to do that. Here's a great example, zombie movies. Let's go ahead and just have this conversation, right? So zombie movies. All right, zombie fans? Who are zombie fans, right? Okay, I'm a little bit of a zombie fan, I'll be honest with you.
Fun, man.
Rob Zombie?
Well, yeah, I'll take it. Because zombies aren't real.
metal.
Connecting back to metal,
But,
and that's
connected back to
that's
metal.
not metal that glorifies God.
Yes. but you understand this is this whole thing. Like I know people who like are zombie. Yeah. They've seen every zombie movie. They've seen every zombie show, and that's just they're entertained by that. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? Maybe we've crossed the line here a little bit, right? Maybe I don't know if it's like if that's the right thing, you know. And so there's discernment, man. If something offends you, well then you don't do that. Exactly. If the metal music bothers you, you don't have to listen to it. If creepy shows give you a sense of fear and dread, don't watch them.
Don't project that
on other people. And I love. How'd you say that again, Shane? That
don't
make your preference somebody else's absolute.
My preference can't be the absolute.
But again, there's tools here. So
yes.
if your fandom becomes so consuming that you know every, like Walking Dead, you know every plot twist, you know every character and how many seasons they lived and all that stuff.
It's Toy Story, but move on.
How much of your time and energy are you using to consume that knowledge, and what application does it have to your life? Entertainment is one thing. Becoming engaged in the subculture of fans of that particular show is another thing, because you can enter into circles like the musicians, where you can have conversations with people that are productive and point them to the kingdom of Jesus, right? You can get into those subcultures and have intelligent conversations because they know the plot twist, and you can insert truth and begin to teach them. If it becomes your focus, then it becomes your God, and that's a danger.
Absolutely, 100%.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for our questions today.
Oh, I'm sure people have follow-ups.
If you have any questions to follow up, especially this episode, you can send them to questions@watersprings.net.
God bless you guys. You loved your family. We out. Warm Bodies.
I love that movie, actually. Yes, I've seen it.
That is my favorite
love story.
Romantic zombie movie.
It's great.
It's the voiceovers that make it so
yes,
awesome.
yes.
I'm just like...